Today?
Yes.
Oh my God, that was horrible yesterday.
Yeah.
You know, it was pleasant at work, nobody bugging you. You didn't have to do
Yeah, ours
anything.
worked all day.
I just,
Oh, that's the word.
I just went skiing.
Wait, so did you hear all day?
Just wanted to invite my daughter.
Yeah, see?
She's like, can I watch something? I was like, no, you can't.
Oh, so TV wasn't.
Well, we-
Everybody's got the Hawaiian theme. What's going on here?
It looks good.
Well, it is. Yeah.
That's great. The what?
So we need to.
Everybody's.
Is that what it was?
That's why I'm here. Yeah, landline, multiple different providers.
The only thing bad for us was trying to call an ambulance. That was not, but they did.
Okay.
Somehow they managed.
Yeah, it's closed. Yeah.
So.
That's what he just said too. He was riding his bicycle.
I think that works.
Yes and no, we're selling under.
Yeah, it's stuck on for the pass right now. So there's a couple things on the nominations for chair and vice chair, and then I also have a staff report in there.
Sure.
So thinking we might discuss those items.
Okay.
And then I don't know if you want to, every time, the job close on Friday.
Nice to-
We're gonna review applicants.
I'm leaning
Quite
into
small
it.
about that. And then we can start the hearing.
That's fine. So we'll just, I'll just say that we're waiting on the applicants, so we'll go down the agenda item.
Okay.
Okay, no problem.
I thought it was gonna be closed for a couple of days.
I think he was saying that he's gonna be here, but just.
No, I think they opened it
Oh,
back
well,
up.
I
Yeah,
really own it,
yeah.
because,
He
you know,
must
we
have
ran
seen
there, so I
something
chatted with her, and it's really-
That snowslide yesterday.
It was horrible.
Yeah.
She's pretty nice for playing like, so I imagine we'll hear about it.
No.
But I'd be down.
Yeah.
How do you say?
That sounds awesome. Yeah, luckily, Alexa are settling across the street.
That was the good.
Good.
I wasn't sure if it was my American bias.
No, I'm not sure.
Right, and that's,
But,
I think, the personal.
It happens.
She's not here for me to ask.
Oh, is AJ coming?
She is, she said it'd be tight to advertise.
Do you guys know how to say her last name?
No.
Chrysa Levy.
Is it Legway or Legway?
Levy. Chrysa Levy.
Chris Legway. Because I wasn't sure which way to go with that. I was like, it could go both.
Yeah.
It could be either.
You know, I think as long as if you ask and then try. It's like Chrysa Levy.
Chris Legway. Okay.
How are you, Jeff?
Good, thank you. And you?
I see you out shoveling sometimes in the morning. I'm leaving for work that early and you're out there doing the sidewalks
Yeah.
over here. Yeah. Who runs Martha's business now?
You know, it may be her. Has she got a son?
She's got dirt. And
And the daughter's been there a couple mornings. So I don't know if she's running it or she was just staying.
I remember them from, gosh, when my kids were.
All right,
Young.
should we start?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, we'll call to order Planning Commission meeting for Wednesday, April 12th, 2023. Roll call
Chair Cindy Olson,
here.
Chuck Howard,
Present?
Don Reimer,
Yeah.
Lisa Manifold,
Here.
Kent Slaymaker,
Here,
Ursula Cruz Legui,
Was that her?
she's right outside.
We'll give her a second. Here. That's good. Okay, so how are we doing this today? Do we have one alternate? 2, 4, 5, 6. So
I think I'm the alternate.
are you?
I think I was the most recent. Okay, so yeah, I'm the alternate.
Okay, so when we're voting, the alternate doesn't vote. No, unless there's a conflict of interest. If somebody's gonna, yep. Okay, so nominations for chair and vice chair. Okay.
I would like to make a nomination for both, actually. I'd like to nominate Cindy for chair and Ursula Cruz Legui. Chris Leggy. For vice chair.
Okay, we need a second.
I second that.
I guess my first question is, can the alternate make a motion?
Yeah, I guess not.
No.
Oh, well, then I'll.
I mean, I
motion-
was just sitting here thinking, wait a minute, we just, yeah, okay, so probably not. So now let's start over.
I'll motion to nominate Cindy for chair and Richie for vice chair.
Okay,
And I'll second.
okay. Roll call?
Chair Cindy Olson,
Yes.
Chuck Harmon,
No,
No, wrong meeting.
Howard. It says Howard, but Harmon in my head. Chuck Harmon, Howard.
I'm gonna do this again.
Just Chuck.
Chuck, did you say yes?
Yes.
Okay, Don Reimer,
Yes.
so Lisa does not get the vote. Kent Slaymaker,
Yes.
Ursula Cruzalegui,
Gee.
Gee.
Yes.
Okay, the motion carries. Thank you, you guys. And thank you, Bruce. Thank you, Kim. Okay. Approval of the minutes for March 1st, 2023. Need a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
I'll second it.
Okay, any discussion, changes? I didn't see anything.
I noticed one thing.
Did you? Okay.
First line, Chairman Cindy Olson, maybe Chairwoman.
Thank you.
Where?
First
it's
line
always
under
been
roll
Chair.
call.
Oh, Chairman. I bet they all say that.
Or we could just go Chair.
That's what I was about to say.
Chair.
I just-
I bet you if you look back on old minutes, they'll say, okay, those all in favor? Yeah,
For chair.
for the, to approve the minutes.
Yeah.
Opposed? Okay, the motion carries.
I do have a question about the minutes though. On the last line, it says that we were gonna get a PDF package. Never mind. I'm confused. We're not gonna get it. You got it. A PDF from Mr. Hawkins about the house on Colorado Boulevard.
Yeah, he has not submitted that yet.
Okay.
I do have a staff report. If you guys want to move into my staff report, and I have a note about that actually. Is that all right, Chair?
Sure, is this the applicant?
No, I was gonna give you my staff update
Okay,
first.
okay. That's
John,
fine.
they need to vote on the.
Oh, sorry.
Did you vote on the?
We did vote on the
You did
minutes,
vote on
it did carry,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
I gave you guys, I have a staff update that I provide to City Council that has a dashboard of all the things we're working on, including community development. And so I decided to include it in my staff report for here, just as we kind of work on what the update looks like. And I was thinking it's a good opportunity just to see what we do for council so that we can create a dashboard for you if you'd like, that shows projects and dates and things like that. But this is what I have been giving City Council, which has my community development section. But there's a couple notes I just wanted to give you. The first is that I received 2 other applications for FPP. One of which is at the property that Ursula just mentioned. And so we have tentatively scheduled that meeting for the 5th in May, which is our regularly scheduled meeting. They're in the referral process right now, so you'll receive a packet once we complete that process, and it'll be similar to this process we're going through this evening. We've also received another FDP, we will be receiving another FDP application for the transportation maintenance facility for the school district. We have not received application yet, and we have not received materials. So we will probably be trying to schedule another meeting in May, so you don't have to double up on that one meeting, because there's going to be a lot of materials. So what I was thinking is the earliest we probably want to hold that meeting is May 17th, but it may be on May 24th, just depending on how they're able to meet the public notification requirements, which require a community meeting before submittal of application. So I've been working with the applicant to make sure that we have all of the details correct for that process before we send it out to referral and all the things we do for FDP. Other
And
than
that's on the school bus barn?
that would be for the school bus barn facility. So that project is kind of working its way forward. We've had several other inquiries over the past few days that will likely require an FDP, if not other processes as well. So I have been having a lot of conversations with people about zoning and things like that. And I would like to mention that I think that we might have warranted a work session, maybe in June, depending on the schedule for these hearings. I think there's a couple of items I'd like to talk to you about. One is the motel ordinance that you guys were considering. I know that that has been sitting there for a moment, and I think it might be time to have another discussion about it. And so I was wondering if you guys would be open to having a work session in June, depending on the hearing schedule, of course, because I think those will have to, there's some requirements you have to follow for those hearings. And then I think that there are some things that we have or that I have noticed is that I'm kind of working through these FDP processes specifically. And it probably will be a bigger part of a process, just as we kind of look at code continuously. I know you guys have done that over the last 5 years. But there are some things that I have noticed that we might want to tweak just a little bit, just to make sure that the intention of some of these public notification processes, which I think is transparency, is met. One of the things that I'd like to address to you is our mailing requirement. There is a mailing requirement to 300 feet for FDP to all the neighbors within 300 feet, but it can occur before the community meeting or before the first hearing of planning commission, 14 days before either. And so I think that we might want to tighten that up a little bit, because there's likely, from a transparency perspective, we may want to consider whether or not we want to notify the public of both of those events, which we may want to do, or just one. And if we want to do just one, when in that process that would occur. Because right now, there's just like there's kind of a little bit of a gap. If you do it before the community meeting, then the planning commission meeting doesn't get notified in the paper, and there's no other public notice other than what we post on the property and in our posting places. So I just wanted to talk to you guys about that a little bit. And then there's a couple other things that I think that might be good to look at. One is the requirement of the applicant to do the mailing for an FDP, and then they provide a certificate of mailing. This might be something that's better for staff to do. I think it's not that onerous for staff to do, and I think it might just provide a better process so that we have a little bit, it's easier for the applicant, just for clarity of how to do kind of an unfamiliar mailing process. And then we have the documentation we need to just say that we've done the mailing as required. So those are some things that I was just going to try to put onto onto the future of planning commission for work session that I think are worthy of conversation. The other thing I wanted to mention to you is the Innovative Housing Opportunity Planning Program that we have been working on is underway now. There's going to be a couple of aspects of this program that I think are really important for planning commission to be involved in. And the first is what we're calling our PATH team. The whole project we named the other day, it's going to be called a Clear Path Home. And the idea is that we're talking about ways that we can provide homes for residents of Clear Creek County and the people who live here. And it's going to be a really cool program. There's going to be a couple of things that I would love to have you guys involved in. One is the work to, of course, to look at our zoning codes and look at how we put affordable housing into our community and how we maintain local decision-making over those decisions. And the second part of this is there's a documentary that's going to be made telling stories about how development works in Clear Creek County, how housing works, and some of the impacts on some of our industries and just our residents that happen because of the housing crisis we have here. There's going to be an opportunity to do interviews. I've talked to Kent about this a little bit, but we would love to have all of you, if you'd like to participate in this interview process, just to talk about, housing stories that you have that impact you in your lives. So that's my staff update. You do have some things that I've been working on just in my regular capacity as well in my staff report. So if you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them.
With the Clear Path Home, is that, I know that's a countywide initiative, but will each of the municipalities keep control over how they handle
Yes.
their own, because everybody is different?
Yes, that's the intention, is to maintain local decision-making over the decisions here. The really cool thing about this project is Idaho Springs is leading for the county. We're the project management, we're taking responsibility for all the fiscal stuff. And so one of the things we've really tried to impress upon this project is that the county should have a seat at the table, but this should be a multi-jurisdictional organization that has local control maintained in each community. And that's how we've gotten buy-in from each of the municipalities. So what we're trying to do ultimately is that if we maybe have a set of development regulations that kind of work for affordable housing, so you can maybe know what to expect in each community. So for instance, like whatever we decide we're going to do, like if we decide we're going to do something with ADUs, maybe the other municipalities would do something similar. Or if we're going to do something with second-story commercial spaces, maybe we'll do the same. But each community is going to use context. I think one really great example of this is Silver Plume. They recently bought the mining district that you see just west of town when you're going, or north of, I don't know what that is. when you're going towards Loveland,
Yes,
through Silver
west.
and they would like to preserve that. They don't want that to become housing. But they have other places and opportunities for that. And so that could be something too, because I think for us, our balance is always open space, natural habitat with people habitat. So that's kind of the balancing we're trying to do here. So you guys have the power to do anything and nothing if you'd like to. And that decision making, I think, is largely going to be in your hands. The people who are doing the code review for the consultants would love to have a one-on-one meeting with you guys as possible, and then probably a work session too. And the thing with this is you don't have to adopt any new zoning regulations if you don't want to. But this one example is this motel conversation. That could be an example of an innovative strategy depending on how that happens. So we are going to meet the requirements for a grant either way, is what I'm trying to say. And that's kind of the goal here, is to keep the local control over the planning, but to take a regional approach and kind of work together to, you know, if we got land in Empire and we don't have it in Idaho Springs and somebody wants to build, maybe, you know, that's going to help us too. So we're just trying to think about how those connections work within our community.
Can we put on, somewhere in the works, like all the coming work sessions, can we put on a review of some of our ADU regulations? Before we move into how we're gonna do things with the clear path home?
Yeah, and I think that's something that is also, there's been a lot of inquiries about ADUs lately.
Yes.
And I think I have some questions about different zone districts and what we are intending for, you know, some of our more obscure properties. There's as an example, I was recently asked about a property that doesn't meet the minimum lot requirements for us and has some other challenges, but an ADU may be an appropriate structure on there because it doesn't have to meet, you know, the same requirements as a full-blown building. So I think that there's some real opportunities for you guys to just discuss some of our more obscure properties that we have in Idaho Springs in that way.
Okay, any other questions, Lauren? Okay, I guess the next agenda item, any conflicts of interest on today's agenda? And then we open it up to if there's anybody from the public that's got a comment that's not on the agenda. I'm assuming you guys are all here for these things, right? So, okay. So we'll go on to, or is the applicant all here? Who you guys were waiting on? Okay. So now we'll go to new
Chairwoman?
business. Oh,
I'm just wondering if it's appropriate for like a non-voting alternate to stay up there during the hearing itself.
well, it's not a public hearing that we're doing.
Yeah, but you know, because you guys are voting and approving, it's a decision up for judicial review.
Right, I mean, we have had them sitting up here,
Okay,
but not voting, but that's, you know, you're the
Okay.
attorney.
and as long as
I don't,
you're
I
not
mean, we
asking,
haven't really had a vote.
yeah, it is a public hearing. And for the FDP,
It's not, this is our regular meeting. It's
Oh,
not.
we're meeting to come.
no, yeah, I
Oh,
mean,
a hearing.
it says public
business.
hearing.
Where's it say public hearing?
Under new
On the
business.
first page.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. My bad. Okay,
If we've had her sit, you know, if we've had alternates sit up there before, I guess that's fine, as long as, you know, Lisa isn't asking any questions of the applicant or
okay.
really participating at all in the
Okay.
hearing
So
itself.
then I would like to I'm not asking this for myself because I'm fine with that. But on other commissions that I am on, we have alternates who are part of the discussion. They don't vote, although they have made motions, but that needs to be clarified.
Yeah,
Because I am on other boards where our alternates are part of the discussion.
yeah, and it's just something that. popped
Well, no,
in
and
my
the reason I
head.
say that is because if the alternate has to step in
Yeah,
when someone else is not here, they need to be, like, if they're here, they need to be aware of what has transpired.
Yeah.
So if we can clarify that for all the boards, that would be great.
gotcha. Thank you.
Prohibited materials in the East End Overlay District 2, which are exterior insulated finishing systems, vinyl or aluminum siding, mirrored or highly reflective glass or glazing, and large-scale pre-finished metal or column panel systems. This is one that I wanted to mention to you because the proposed building will be clad in pre-finished metal materials. The side of the building will be clad in stucco colored panels, and the front of the building will be clad in corrugated steel colored panels. The proposed exterior materials appear to be on the list of prohibited materials listed in the general standards of the East End Overlay District. The applicant has been notified of the situation and asked to present possible alternatives to the Planning Commission. Location-specific standards. Development in the East End Overlay District is supposed to address Colorado Boulevard to the maximum extent practicable. Entrance locations shall be placed for consideration of business-to-business pedestrian access and safe access to pedestrian and bicycle facilities. An operable and unlocked door is required on Colorado Boulevard for commercial businesses. It's important to remember this is a marijuana cultivation facility, so it is not going to have an unlocked front door. The proposed orientation of the building does meet this requirement. And the other thing that is good to think about in this property is that the greenway runs right in front of it. So there is pedestrian and bicycle activity happening right in front of the store. And this will improve that lot, which is currently a dirt lot, and there will be a nice looking building, I think, on that space. Parking, surface parking and vehicle storage is supposed to be located behind or into the side of buildings. Surface parking is not permitted between the main building and Colorado Boulevard, but because of the variance, they have no parking requirements on site. That will all be handled in the city right away. Street level interest, a variety of features shall be incorporated to activate the street frontage and create a pedestrian and bicycle friendly environment along Colorado Boulevard. There are a number of things listed in the code that could happen here that would meet this requirement. The applicant has shown in the plans, in the site plan, some landscaping in front of the building, and there may be future opportunities to collaborate with them further to activate the space. It is a very narrow space because they are meeting the requirement to keep it as close to Colorado Boulevard as possible. But we've in the past worked with them. We provided mining carts, and we worked with them in our facade improvement program to provide some additional landscaping. And I think there might be an opportunity to do more in the future. Clear zone, the Clear Creek Greenway runs in front of this property. It's wider than a normal sidewalk of 11 feet. Additionally, there's a public parking area directly south of the Greenway that further extends the clear zone in front of this property. They're required to provide a 6 foot wide to 8 foot wide clear zone in front of the property, and this requirement is met just because of the way that the streetscape is built there. Pedestrian connectivity is an important point of the staff report. Direct pedestrian access shall be provided to and between the primary building entrance or entrances to each building, sidewalks or walkways on adjacent properties that extend to a shared property line, sidewalks or trails along Colorado Boulevard and Minor Street, and the Clear Creek Greenway shall be provided. In analysis of this project, we realize there's no sidewalk connection on the east side of this property along Gilson Street between the bridge over Clear Creek to the south and Colorado Boulevard to the south or to the north. Or I'm sorry, I said that wrong. The creek to the north, the street to the south. Additionally, the current property line to the east extends into Gilson Street. The provision of a sidewalk in this space is required by the East End Action Plan. We have been working with the applicant and came to an agreement whereby the applicant and property owner will design a 4 foot sidewalk and provide right of way for that sidewalk to the city, who will construct that sidewalk at a later time. The applicant also agreed to provide right of way for all of Gilson Street to the city so that we have cleaned up that situation that's happening right there. The city engineer has determined that approximately 10 feet is required for this on the east end of the property where it extends into Gilson Street. The current site plan shows a 4-foot easement on this side of the property. Per the agreement with the city, a sidewalk and site grading plan must be shown on the site plan wide enough to accommodate the construction of that sidewalk without impacting the foundation of the new building. The applicant must provide the property for the sidewalk to the city through easement or some other means. This is a condition of approval for this FUP. Or a suggested condition of approval. Vehicular access. We try to make sure that access points to the site are coordinated with adjacent properties to make sure traffic operations are smooth and minimize the need for multiple curb cuts. Right now on the property, there's a pre-existing curb or a curb cut that was utilized by the applicant at the property for access. The building has been designed to continue utilizing that access point to the property for trash loading and deliveries. The applicant additionally did a traffic analysis, which is one of the 2 options available in our code. And that was provided to the city engineer satisfactorily. Clear Creek frontage, there are some requirements in the code, such as providing views of the creek and making sure that design features embrace the creek's presence and visibility, support pedestrian and bicycle access along the frontage, and enhance enjoyment of residents and visitors. This project is located on the south side of this lot where the buildable area is, and then the grades go fairly steeply into the creek. Because of the marijuana regulations that are in section 9-161, it is impossible to have a break in the massing of this building. So the view of the creek there is not, it's not going to be, you're not going to see the creek from Colorado Boulevard in this location. It is located on a corner lot, and you can see the Gilson Street Bridge, and you can see some of the view of the creek from the east side of the property. But there will be a largely massed building when this is constructed. So I think that the need to follow the marijuana regulations in this particular case kind of outweigh the view shed concerns, I believe. So that's what I said in my staff report. Parking lot screening, again, this is one that is required, that parking lot are screened from the greenway, sidewalks, trails, open space, and other public spaces. But they don't have any parking requirements on site because of the variance. I did put a section in here about signage. This is a process that is not decided by planning commission, but I wanted to make you aware of the signage plan that was submitted by the applicant. What typically happens is they'll submit for sign permits to the city clerk, who does the analysis that is in the staff report here to determine what signage is allowed on the property. I kind of did the initial analysis of the total square footage of the signage that's allowed. And I just wanted to mention that the applicant will need to apply for sign permits before installing signs. City staff will analyze this application and ensure that it complies with ISM or the Idaho Springs Municipal Code at that time. There is one issue that I think is relevant to the FPP, and that is the pole sign that the applicant has proposed on property is presently not existing on the property. So we need to make sure that it meets all the requirements of code, which requires the biggest requirement is a 10-foot setback. And so we need to make sure that the new site plan, that a site plan is submitted that has that reflected in the drawing. Standards and specifications for design and engineering and construction. JVA Inc. is the city's engineering firm, and Nathan from JVA is here. He did the analysis for this application. He provided the applicant with comments about the project in the middle of March and gave them several comments to address. This letter is included in the referrals for the staff report. On March 27th, the applicant responded with an updated site plan and plumbing information specifically for the building to respond to these comments. JVA completed a second round of review of the application on April 4th. Following that review, there were still a couple of comments remaining, which were some fairly simple things. The roof drains need to be shown where they discharge, ADA ramp and connections for the sidewalk to the building, and slope areas on the site plan, and then the sidewalk on Gilson Street. On April 5th, the applicant submitted an updated site plan that satisfies almost all of these requirements. The only thing remaining is that a sidewalk and site grading plan for the same that meet the standards and specifications for design and construction and are approved by the city engineer must be provided on the site plan as a condition of approval for this project. There's a couple of different paths that we can take to address the right-of-way situation. It could be an easement or some kind of plat amendment that could happen. That will be a separate process from this final development plan, and we will continue working with the applicant to make sure that that is satisfied before building permits are issued. I have a list of referrals that we sent this project to. Andy Marsh received it, the Chief of Police, Nathan Busek, received it, John Curtis, Director of Public Works, JVA Engineering, Safe Built, our building department, the Clear Creek Fire Authority, the city attorney, and the deputy city clerk. There was some minor comments we had to do, make sure we met the tiling requirements, which we did. Our code requires it within 30 days of applications. We just had to make sure we met that. And that was good. We provided public notice for this project as required by the code. The community meeting was held on February 16th. The mailing was sent on March 14th. And the sign was posted on the property on March 28th. I have a list of attachments in my staff report that I included that include all the impact analysis, all the plans, maps, and comments from JVA to the applicant. To kind of summarize what I've said here, the city received an application for a final development plan at 2820 Colorado Boulevard for the construction of a new marijuana cultivation facility. Staff finds the application complies with the criteria for approval, except for as noted in the recommended conditions of approval. I have a suggested motion that I put in my staff report. I just want to go over the conditions that I am recommending. Prior to the issue of any permit related to this plan, the following shall occur, which is an amended site plan must be filed and approved by the city administrator that includes the sidewalk and grading details along the east side of Gilson Street from Colorado Boulevard to the bridge that conform to the design specifications of the city of Idaho Springs. And the property owner shall provide approximately 10 feet of width of right-of-way dedication approved by the city, either by easement or subsequent plat amendment on the east side of the property between the Gilson Street Bridge and Colorado Boulevard, deemed adequate for the maintenance and upkeep of Gilson Street and the installation of a new sidewalk. Final condition is the proposed pole sign should be relocated to meet the 10-foot setback requirement. Do you have any questions for me?
Well, let's go. Let's go to the applicant.
Okay.
And then we'll do public and then if we have questions, so. Okay, so does the applicant want to come up here? State your name.
Can you state your name and address for the record?
My name is David Michael. At 422 Iron Post Way in Park, Colorado. Is my address, and I am the owner of and general counsel for the
What was the, I'm sorry, I can't read that.
422
Ironside Way,
Iron Post
and what's?
in Winter Park, which was really fun to get here with Bertha being.
Should have a,
Okay. Can you also raise your right hand? Do you swear that the testimony that you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
And I can tell you truthfully that I don't think my presentation will do anything, will pale in comparison to Jonathan's presentation. It was phenomenal, and I appreciate it.
Can we have you speak up a little too?
My apologies, I absolutely can.
Okay, well, I'm just thinking if anybody's listening also.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I think my presentation will no doubt pale in comparison to Jonathan's very thorough description of our application and the site plan we want to develop here in Idaho Springs. I really do want to thank you, staff. Working with staff oftentimes in these projects can be tedious. This was not the case. This was a very collaborative process. And I really feel like from Nathan and Andy and Jonathan, all the input that we got from them really helped make this a more thorough and an excellent development plan for this property and a better application than initially submitted. And it was been a pleasure to work with you. As far as our application, this is what it's going to look like. And you can see that here. The existing building is really that far left side, which has that big stucco overhang. I'm sorry, big roof overhang with the shingles that come down, and will be replaced with that that portion. That's not really what's part of this FDP, but I did want to give that to you as a reference point. There used to be a little house on there when we first purchased the business from Kaimai in 2016. They were growing in that house. We grew in that house. We at some point in time said we cannot grow in that house. You know, you can't really grow without much wood around. It's just that human environment. It's just not. It's not what we want to do with the way that we do things, the way that we grow. and the way that we want to give to our customers. And so we want to do something that we're proud of, and hopefully something that, you know, the city can also be proud of. I think this will be one of the more attractive buildings in this area when it's finally developed. And we've done so because it's something that we take a lot of pride in. You know, we've been here since December of 2016. We've taken part in historical societies along and really tried to be at the Bluegrass Festival, and really tried to be active members within this community. And we've really just enjoyed and been thrilled to be in business for, now almost 7 years. It was our third store. And we started up in Grand County. And this has been just, it's been a great business for us, which is why we're looking to do this expansion. Now, the part of the building that I want to direct you to is really from the awning up in the center over to the right. This will be what it looks like from the street face. We think this is going to be way more attractive than what was there in the past. Dumpster enclosures, and it's going to really look, I think it will pop and really help develop that part of town and be a new building that is going to enhance and be something that it's just aesthetically pleasing for the tourists that are coming in, as well as for the people that live here. The old building was about 2,700 square feet between the house and storage sheds that were there. It's now about 7,200 square feet. It's a state-of-the-art cultivation. And why that matters and why I want to explain that to you with this FDP hearing is that we're going to operate with the same number of employees as the previous operation, even though we're almost tripling the space. And we're going to do that because we're instituting irrigation systems and watering systems, so we're not hand watering. We have, as a company, grown quite a bit. You know, we started with about 20 people up in Tabernash, Colorado. We now have 175 employees across the state. We're opening our 10th store in Golden next month, which we're really excited about. And, you know, all of our employees, day one, when you start with us, even at the lowest level, you know, for an hourly position, we're paying 50% of your health, vision, and dental. And once your salary, we pay 100%. We wanted to do that. We started doing that January 1, 2021, when we realized that we're living in a pandemic, and this is just a basic service, that all of our employees need. And you know, we've been voted the best place to work in Grand County, where we started every single year since 2016. And we started there in May 2015. We won it again last year. We also won best locally produced product, best customer service, and best dispensary. We've won a lot of awards in Boulder and we won some awards here and all over the place, but the way that we just generally operate. So with those 3 employees, the fertigation system that we're instituting does the automatic watering. Then we have also created, taken a lot of the services, a lot of the activities that we're engaging in cultivations, like trimming, that are very labor intensive, and brought those all to one location down in a cultivation we have in Aurora. So we're not going to have this influx of traffic coming in from employees during a harvest scenario. We've also made it so that all of our just deliveries come to one centralized location, and then we distribute them ourselves. So the traffic requirements based on all of these changes that we've made are actually going to create less of a traffic and parking requirements, even though we have a bigger space. And that would be counterintuitive, but with the way that we're doing things now, this is going to be just a state-of-the-art facility that's going to produce really good weed. As far as water demand, what we try and do in terms of services is you really don't want to water the plants more than what they need. And you really don't want runoff, because that water, we're putting nutrients in there. It's expensive water. And so you want to give the plants exactly what they want to drink. So it's very minimal in terms of water impact, in terms of sewer impact, because we really don't have any runoff to speak of. It's a minimal amount. And we've had our, effluent tested, everything that we put in, it's minimal. A golf course is going to do 1 million pounds worth in terms of what they put into, the grass and the drainage and that kind of stuff. What we're doing in this, it's very environmentally sound. we really, because we were operating there, we already have all the services except for we need to add glucose power. And, there really aren't any environmental hazards associated with this. We've been operating here without incident since 2016. There shouldn't be any difference. And, we're putting in state-of-the-art HVAC systems. We've been running those up in Tabernash. And we have a requirement there to have zero odor emissions coming off the property, which we've never had a complaint and never had an issue. The building here, it's the building that was there, it's torn down, it's not historic. And what we're going to be adding, I think will really help anchor a sense of some of the mining materials. And as Jonathan mentioned, we do have a request, which I understand is outside of the zoning parameters, to use a paneling system. Post-COVID, construction materials and lead times have become really, really challenging in these projects. And so in talking with our design team, we decided to go with a metal building that will be pre-designed. And these panels that are going on, zoning codes have been against using this type of materials in a number of different instances because it looks like a mini storage site and it looks like a metal building. But times have really changed. One, we have these supply chain issues, but these building materials basically are just embedded on a panel and then put on there, and it looks just like a real McCoy in terms of wood or metal materials that we'd like to see on site. And if you could pull up, what we wanted to do is, I also do have someone from the company that can talk a little bit further about this, if so desired. Please. So what we've asked for is to kind of show you some real life examples rather than just a rendering. These are photos of materials that were used that are similar to what we want to use. Now let's be clear, if you guys say we can't use this, you're perfectly within the right. And we won't object. It's these panels are not particularly allowed, and we can do infill, and we can create the same thing by creating an exterior with wood and metal. But these buildings, you can see, this is a very attractive facade. And as we go down through, it's something that you look at it and you don't really come away with the notion that this is some mini storage prefab metal building that has those little curves on it and looks ugly and looks like something that would not be something the city would be proud of and nothing that would be not aesthetically pleasing. Let's go to the next series. And so what we'd ask in terms of we have a couple of other pictures. Well, Angelica, as we tries to get that up, I'll continue on. What we'd ask is that, if the planning commission determines that this is okay and this is appropriate, I think that we can move forward, and the aesthetic appearance is going to be one that is going to be highly attractive. It isn't going to be something that takes away from the East Hampton Overlay District. It's going to add to it. It's going to be one of the more attractive buildings, if not the most attractive building in that particular area. Given the fast food and gas stations that are popular in there. We are building this as a tenant. Scott and Sandy Pinnell, owners of Pinnell and Associates, are the property owners, and we are working with them as the owners of the property to develop this site together, with them as the owners and us as the tenant. And we've been a tenant there with Scott and Sandy for the last 6 years and developed a great working relationship. With regard to the sidewalk, we're thrilled to design it and create an opportunity for that neighborhood for the neighbors below. It is, I think, an appropriate way to handle the requirement that we create that connectivity. So a couple of other examples that will show you some what the materials look like. The next one. stuff again.
Process.
Okay.
I apologize.
No worries. And please, is there any questions about these materials or that, or would you like me, I believe we have somebody, is that Perkins? Yes,
they're here.
online that you guys are welcome, that actually designs these, that you're welcome to ask questions of if you have any concerns.
I would just say that if we're going to have an exception for materials, examples are great, but it would be even better to know the exact materials that are gonna be used and the exact facing that you plan on. These all look fine, but there's some pretty wide differences between these buildings.
Yeah, the first two, we want to give you some perspective as to what can be done to try and dispel the notion that prefab metal buildings look a certain way. It's been a real change in construction, and zoning is designed to create, deal with problems that we've seen without that type of regulation. And I was a zoning enforcement officer, City of Grand Lake. I perfectly understand it. But then things evolve, and the zoning doesn't necessarily change in pace with these type of constructions. This is what it's going to look like.
So is the material you're speaking of the part that looks like a wood siding, or is it the red?
It's both. And Angelica, if you could go back to the our elevation. Mhm. So it will be that same kind of siding along here that it will be like that, look like that kind of corrugated metal with the red stucco is what the intention is. And so those are some of the best examples we can give. What I would suggest is perhaps if you have some concern about actually looking at these, that I would be perfectly happy with a condition that city staff has the ability to disallow. We can bring material boards and disallow it or reject it if it does not seem commensurate with what the goals and what spirit is trying to achieve with these overlay district zoning perimeter, which is, look, SIP panels and these types of panels, historically, they don't look very good. They look very industrial. And your concerns are absolutely warranted. And so I can certainly, once we can get those material boards and get a panel actually created, and if it's something that is determined while we go through the permitting process after the site plan, after this FDP approval, I would be more than happy if the city felt like what we were doing was going to be like a prefab industrial building that wasn't commensurate with the goals of creating something that really fits the spirit of Idaho Springs, which is a mining town, and there's woods and corrugated metals that we're going to be using. If it doesn't look right, we will do what's called infill. It's much more expensive, and I don't know that it's a better product, because what you're doing is, instead of taking a panel that looks right and adheres perfectly, we have to do a lot more labor intensive to actually put those actual materials and adhere them onto the prefab building. And the prefab design we're using because, look, we want to get this thing, we want to get it dried in before winter hits so that we can start building it. And lead times on construction materials and the elevated cost of doing stick build, it's just not economical. And it just isn't working right now, because a lot of these materials are coming from, they're not producing them fast enough.
What's the materials on the other building?
Existing right now, it's stucco, right?
Like the hard stucco.
Mhm.
So the red one?
Oh, the red
The
is
stucco finish, and then the other side, it's actually called a corrugated metal finished, and then the red stucco side, it's got like it almost looks like I don't want to say popcorn ceiling finish, but like a stucco-y, like a wall, like a orange peel kind of finish on it with the spray. We had talked about whether there was a possibility to have like a brick facade on that side.
It almost looks from there
Yeah.
to.
Yeah,
There's
we
no,
are, would be willing to do, we prefer not to do it on the side of the building. Or at least on the rear of the building, but we could do, some sort of brick overlay if we needed, if that was decided. We do think that we'll go into that, from the gray stucco, we're gonna get rid of that shingle, go into the corrugated and then the red stucco. We think that there's gonna be transitions, there's gonna be appeal and intrigue, and it'll be aesthetically pleasing from an architectural perspective.
there's a definition of a term in code to consider for planning commission, and it says in code that you cannot use large scale panel systems. And so as we've discussed this at City Hall amongst staff, we think that means one panel system covering the entire building instead of like a large scale panel approach. And so there is probably some conversation to be had about whether or not this approach with the two different materials for the east and west half of the building meet that code requirement. But that term is not defined in code specifically. So that's just, some initial analysis we performed.
So, and you refer the large panels, you mean like large scale pre-finished metal column panel system shall be prohibited, right? Like it reads here.
There's two ways it could mean. It could mean like a very large scale panel, like big, and it could mean the whole building coverage. And we think that in this application, it's talking about the whole building coverage being the panel system. And so there is panel system on both. The other thing we've been talking about is, if you remember when we were talking about, or I know I went a little bit quickly through my staff reports, I apologize about that, but the design setting specifically says that harken back to industrial gold rush kind of aesthetic on that side of town, mixed with the googie architecture of the motels that we have. And so one of the things that this does is that corrugated metal section, if it wasn't for the fact that it's a panel system, which is specifically prohibited, likely the outside of that part of the building would be allowed. And then the stucco piece of the building isn't completely out of character with what you do see in other parts of the East End Overlay District. So this is another thing that came up during this, that maybe we do need to think about what our definitions mean for those terms in our FTP process. But I think that this isn't far from what is required. It's just that it says panel system, which is where we got caught up.
And then just a follow-up question real quick. When we have this is prohibited materials on code. So does that mean that we will have to modify the code, or there's an option for us to like decide to like not make an exception for this specific
The city administrator has the authority to make that determination, I believe, Andy, is that correct? Or
Yeah, so if you look at that, the code section where it says distinctive materials, it says the following additional materials may also be used, lists off a bunch, and other similar materials consistent with the design principles as approved by the city administrator. So it's possible that what's proposed tonight is, not the large scale pre-finished metal, and is one of those other similar materials consistent with the design principles as approved by the city administrator.
That can be one of the conditions of the motion.
If I may, when I was growing up, in the late 70s, early 80s, I'm dating myself, but I remember my kitchen had linoleum, right? Vinyl. And there's a way of thinking about that. And when you look at a vinyl flooring right now, it's almost impossible to differentiate that from hardwood, in some scenarios. Things have changed. And basically what we'll be doing is that we are using a panel. I do think it's subject to interpretation. And we're not trying to force this upon you and say, this is the way it has to be. What we're asking for is a viable economic measure that meets lead times for us, avoids labor costs, and keeps the project viable and moving forward. And look, we're gonna do what's demanded of us to make sure that we do something that you guys are proud of and as the gatekeepers for this community, that we want to be proud of it too, because we're part of this community. We don't want to put something up that's going to be an eyesore, or that's going to be uninviting, or that's going to be ugly. We want people to come in. We want people to shop with us. We want people to have an experience. The facade is the first thing they see. I don't want something. That centerpiece, that's what we have in Tavernage at our first location. We try to mirror that, keep that continuity of what we do. When you look inside, we're switching, we're gonna make the retail, we're gonna switch that all around, so it looks great, bigger space. All of our display cases have, a beetle kill finish on it, where you skin it that way. And when you look at where things have gone and how things have changed, we are meeting the spirit of the code, but we're doing it by sticking it on panels and sticking it on and putting it on in a way that makes construction sense on the exterior, on the metal building, right? As opposed to trying to put those same materials on, but doing it not in this panel design, which is more expensive and frankly is not as good of a product. Because inside those panels, there's insulation, there's all sorts of things that we want in a cultivation to help keep the cold out, keep the temperature that we want to create in. So it's a better product for us, for our application and our use. If I thought for a second that what we were doing was going to be aesthetically unappealing or ugly, it's just not what we want to do next to our retail space. I can assure you of that. And taking those shingles off that building and modernizing it, we think we're going to do something that, as the gatekeepers of this community, in terms of determining what the aesthetic should be here. And I've served on planning commissions in Winter Park as well previously. I get what your responsibility is, and your inquiries are more than appropriate, and you really want to address this. And so, what I'd ask is, again, if you're comfortable, we will defer to the city administrator to be able to say thumbs up or thumbs down if he thinks we're not in the spirit of the code and we're not going to create the aesthetic that we ought to create with the panel we intend to use.
Okay, does the applicant have more?
Yes, I was going to have.
Well, we'll go to questioning. Let's finish there,
Yeah, I was going to have
their
Scott Cannell come up and
presentation.
address you as well as the owner.
and then it'll be public, then our questions.
I just asked them to say it in 2-year period. Right, so it's
Okay.
looks nice.
Is he a code part of the applicant, is the owner of the property, or is Rose from?
I mean, he did know spot.
Yeah, just to clarify.
Oh,
Yeah.
Scott, please state your name and address.
You
No, you can't, your name and address.
Now, 1245 Colorado Boulevard, Idaho Springs.
Now you can raise your hand. Do you swear that the testimony that you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Good evening. I'm privileged to know every single one of you up there, since it's a small town. We have a small community feel, and I sit up there as a council person. Tonight, I'm representing myself as a developer, business owner. I appreciate what you guys do and serve the role for Idaho Springs. I'd just like to speak to what David already spoke of a little bit, and I'll be brief, but for 6 years, Zagati has been a real responsible owner and operator of a marijuana business in Idaho Springs, responsible as a tenant to me. So I can vouch for them that they have the best interest of our town in mind. And we as me as a developer and them as an operator, there's no reason why we wouldn't want to have a vision of a nice looking building in Idaho Springs. That's a major priority for us. Sorry. I know most of you are probably aware of the house that was sitting there. I mean, it was not a pretty sight. So the vision was to tear that down and have a nice looking building, something that as you drive into East Idaho Springs that looks good for the town. And my vision is hopefully this will spur other developments in town. And we're willing, you know, them as a business, me as a developer, we're willing to make that investment in Idaho Springs. In return, I think that, you know, developments bring sales tax money to the town. So that's the good side for Idaho Springs. I don't know if any of you have any questions for me or,
Thank you.
thank you.
Are
Okay,
there any further questions that you guys might have? as
yeah, we'll go to questioning. Now we'll go to public comment. I don't think we have any public. Do you have anybody online?
No. Well, did you want to speak to the person regarding the siding as well? You guys good? No, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
We do not.
No public comment. So now we'll go to commissioners' questions for the applicant or the city staff. So yeah, if you want to stand there. Somebody wants to start by,
Sure. The concept of paneling, as long as there's a legal path to it, makes sense to me. It's, as you said, it's gone technologically really far probably since the code was written. But there's a million kinds of, you know, styles and materials that can be put on a panel. It almost gets to the point where just the concept of paneling isn't specific enough, so that the pictures are nice, but as long as we have something where the city staff or us again, or probably just city staff will work with you on the exact specific materials that will be on the panel, it makes sense to me. Because I'm sure you want it to look nice, but we just want to make sure we're all in agreement on what nice is.
I'm actually 100% in agreement, and I think it's appropriate. And what we'll do is, upon receiving this approval, is we can have a panel developed and sent to us. So that as a material, you know, concept, and then, you know, present it to staff and city administrator as appropriate. I think can give a thumbs up, a thumbs down, and we'll abide by what's determined by that. And like you said, we could put anything on there, so it's not like if one thing is inappropriate, it doesn't mean that we wouldn't be unwilling to try a different panel or something else that meets the aesthetics and meets the spirit of it.
Have you presented any possible alternatives?
Well, the alternative would be that we would do an infill, is what it's called.
Okay.
So rather than using the paneling system, which is designed to integrate well with the building materials and the framing materials we're using, it's more expensive, it's more labor intensive, and we believe it will accomplish exactly the same thing, but won't be panels. So it's just a more expensive alternative. Certainly can go that route, but it's
Is it a correct thing to say that either way, infill or panels, the final very outside covering that's touching air that you can see, it's the same material, but it was installed like, because it was attached to a panel that you stuck on like a Lego, or it was installed by putting it on like mud or something, but it's the same material. Is that correct?
I think that's an incredibly articulate way to put it. Yeah, I mean, it is exactly the same thing. It's just a question of, is panels prohibited or not? And that is subject obviously to interpretation. And I think what's being asked of you is to say, yeah, this is in the spirit of the code, or hey, no panels in Idaho Springs.
okay, I had a couple of questions. So in front of the new building, that's not going to be parking, right?
So the existing parking that is there,
Is that
Is
is
the
stays?
parking.
Okay,
yeah,
And
so
then-
that was part of the Colorado Boulevard.
okay, so the one end is still going to be the liquor store,
Yes,
and then the dispensary, and then what's the connectivity with the other building? How is that connecting?
well, they're one solid building, so the cultivation will
Okay, it just,
actually.
it looks like there's a gap in there, so.
Yeah, and it's kind of designed to give that offset so that it's not, so there's two things that are happening there.
Okay,
One, the cultivation will really begin where that awning is
okay,
and come from that door over through the whole rest of the facility. Now, we set the other part back because we do have an apron there where, you know, a truck can come in, deliver whatever we need. It's not sitting on the road, you know, like a liquor, like you see with like, you know, a Bud Light truck where they're unloading it. And we have dumpsters, and we don't have really the ability to put them anywhere else. So that way the trash truck can come in there. We have CO2 deliveries. All of that's gonna happen when that's offset. And then it also creates, I think, a very architecturally aesthetic, pleasing view, because what you don't have is a monolithic facade, but rather something that has a little setback and some intrigue, which, is happening also on the other side, right? Where you have two different, facades coming together, popping out, and what you end up with. And then even with the awning in the middle, it's not just something that is a stagnant view, but rather has intrigue and has things that draw your eye.
So the apron in the front is gonna be sloped where the truck can pull up there?
It actually already exists.
Okay,
So it was done when Colorado Boulevard.
they did a drive.
Yeah, because we had that space there and dumpsters are just sitting there right now. So that's where the trash company comes in and grabs them.
And Cindy, I think that representation is a little bit not
Yeah.
to scale.
Yeah.
And that apron looks big right there. That apron's actually just about 1.5 car lengths wide,
So it's
Yeah, it does,
basically
it looks huge.
but it looks huge on that picture.
I'd have picnic tables up there. From the look of it, so, okay, and then the other one. So the sidewalk, what did you guys decide on it? The width of the sidewalk,
4 foot.
the 4 foot? I think the requirement is what, 6 to 8?
So we talked about that. One of the challenges with this area is the grading along the west side of the Gilson Street. And the applicant has a very limited buildable envelope on this site where it makes financial sense to build this property. And so with those two factors in mind, we think that a 4-foot sidewalk is the minimum required. And Nathan probably speak to this better than I can, but that's kind of the minimum sidewalk we can require that would serve the needs of the city. This is a very heavily traveled sidewalk for children. They come to the bus stop right there on the corner. And that neighborhood behind accesses the Gilson Street Bridge very frequently. But Nathan, I don't know if you have anything you'd like to add about the sidewalk and requirements or anything.
Well, I have a question on that. Does it meet the ADA requirements that the city would have to meet? Because it's gonna be a city sidewalk, so, and if you're having kids going back and forth, I guess that's more, I guess I think of the ADA part of it.
Great.
Yes, a 4-foot walkway will meet ADA requirements if designed correctly. I think that is one of the final items that we are looking for as part of this is the agreement that they will finalize their design. But we've checked the grades from the bridge along Gilson to Colorado Boulevard, and it looks feasible without breaking code. So ADA is possible up and down that walkway. I think another thing to note about the width of the sidewalk too is that at the bridge on Gilson, I think that sidewalk is only 4 foot crossing the bridge too. So it essentially provides a pathway crossing the creek, and it'll be consistent up to Colorado Boulevard Road, where they'll, obviously get onto Colorado and have more walkable space. But currently, there is no existing sidewalk, and as had been mentioned, the grade out there is just difficult, especially adjacent to the building and with the property in kind of Gilson already. I think there is a benefit to just, acquiring the space for the 4-foot walkway to aid in the pedestrian circulation in that area.
So I think it's great to do it. I just didn't know if it would be ADA compliant. I thought it would be wider than 4 feet. But it's
No
great.
question on the sidewalk, while we're on it. That's all right.
Yeah.
Did I understand, Jonathan, that the city, or excuse me, that the applicant will provide the city access for the city to build the sidewalk
Yeah,
at a later time?
correct. So this is a requirement in the Easton Overlay District, that you make these pedestrian connections. And this corner is difficult with the grades and the envelope of the building. And so in conversations with the applicant, they're trying to build an economically feasible project. We want to make sure that we maintain safe pedestrian connections, especially for kids in this area. And it seemed like we had a mutually beneficial partnership here, that if we could clean up the right of way, especially in Gilson Street, because it does extend out into Gilson Street, get that sidewalk our ability to build a sidewalk at times might be easier than the applicants, just because
Right.
sometimes we might have a larger scale concrete project or something like that, that we could stick this as a part of. And so I think for us, as long as we know that it's designed to the standards of the city, we can take on that construction project and make sure it happens correctly and all that kind of stuff. So,
And timely, I
correct,
guess.
yeah, and cost effectively.
Right.
Sometimes it's all about mobilizing up here for concrete, and we just, I think it might be a little easier for us.
But there are not any specific projects that will happen in that corner for.
Not scheduled now,
Intersection.
but I think that we can tackle this project, and Andy might have more insight on this, but I think this is something we could tackle in the immediate, maybe not immediate future, but soon in the future.
As long as we don't end up, I mean, and this wouldn't be the applicant's fault, but as long as we don't end up with a situation where what's there is demolished and it lingers and there's not really any path for some amount of time.
What makes it worse,
Right.
worse of a connection that already exists.
I don't think we can possibly make it worse.
Well, and to be clear, that would be on the city,
No,
not
no,
on
and I understand. The worst case scenario is status quo.
Yeah.
With this situation. We've been operating on there, you're not gonna see a change. So the worst case scenario is status quo. The real benefit here is that the property right now sticks out into the street because everything is off along that section of town. And what this would do is clean that up for the city so that the property boundaries are appropriate based on, you know, where things actually sit in reality, not on some surveyor's map. And so we're really cleaning up a legal problem, a boundary issue, and creating the opportunity for the city to put that sidewalk in. And I think this is a mutually beneficial decision that is fair and just given the nature of this, what we're doing here. It's only gonna make things better. It can't make things worse.
I had one other question, the parking lot screening. We were talking at the dumpsters and stuff,
So.
is that something that's gonna be screened? I guess I'm
the
confused.
black-
on
That's
that.
also, that is
It's
required. in
required,
code,
yeah,
and
I knew it
is.
was
That is the
required,
dumpster
okay.
enclosure. So in there will be the dumpster for the liquor
Okay.
store, the
Okay.
dumpster for our business, as well as recycling.
Okay, so I just, yeah,
I didn't put the dumpster screening in my staff report, but I should have, so,
yeah, that's
and it
just,
will be.
It's gonna be way more attractive than what's sitting there right now.
And as I look at your drawing, and I look at the drawings that we've got in front of us, it appears to me that the dumpster enclosure is the far right door that's inside, and there's nothing behind the black.
The black, I understand, I can certainly.
That's right, and you see, here's the end of the building.
I get that. There are some site plans that we can go to real quickly. Because sometimes it's hard with these renderings
And that's
to really
behind the
get
metal
depth
door.
and
Here's the
perspective.
black.
That's the door.
The way.
Up the doors
Uh,
in the
yeah.
corner.
See, it's clear out on the corner.
So if you look at the site plan, come down one more please.
There's a little door there.
Okay, so that gives you a top-down view
This
of that
is
dumpster
black
enclosure,
on the wall.
and you can see where the dumpsters are.
That's this part.
Sir?
No.
Yeah.
That's where the building is.
Chuck,
So what I can show you is, right there is what it looks like. I understand that the elevations make it challenging to see, but there's a door into the building on the right. And then, would you put the cursor where the dumpsters are? Right in here, there'll be two dumpsters and a recycling container. And frankly, the rendering will show how little you can actually see it.
I have a request for clarification from you, Jonathan. The clear zone. I'm not understanding exactly like the difference between the clear zone. And like, where is that located exactly? Because I mean, I know the setback is from the property line, right? But the clear zone is like in front of the property line to the sidewalk.
Yes,
Or from the sidewalk further
It's-
out.
a little bit interesting in the East End overlay district, how that works. What the code says is a clear zone, a minimum of 6 feet wide to 8 feet wide shall be maintained within or adjacent to the hardscape portion of the build to zone along Colorado Boulevard. And so where this site gets a little bit interesting is it has the dedicated public diagonal parking that you can kind of see the,
Actually drop down one.
you see the
Right
the
there.
dashed lines on the bottom of the picture, you see the property
Uh-huh,
crosses right now actually through those. And depending on how what happened is that was part of the right of way during Colorado Boulevard construction. So the build to zone in this space is interesting because the apron on the corner there and then the parking spaces. So what I think the most fair way to look at this is that the build to zone starts at the edge of Colorado Boulevard pavement. So with that in mind, those parking spaces are about 15 feet wide. Plus you get the 11 feet of greenway, till you get to the edge of the landscape part of the applicant property.
okay. So the clear zone always, regardless of this location, it's always gonna be outside of their property line.
I don't think so, because our property lines get a little funky in the right of way, and the other thing is that there's
Okay, so
two
yeah,
different
sorry.
conditions in East End overlay. There's a permeable street edge and a non-permeable street edge. And so it really depends on which zone they're in and how that
Okay.
works.
Yeah.
So.
And I guess I'm referring you wrong, because you're right, I mean, the property line that we're seeing, it's obviously messed up in a way. So I guess I'm talking more like the property line that we see physically from the sidewalk.
Yeah,
And that's kind of the part I'm trying to understand because of what something you just mentioned, because if it's like a permeable space, we have a part that says that certain things should be included, like cafe seating or benches and whatever, but the clear zone, it says that benches, and that kind of stuff is not permitted.
right.
So that's kind of the part that I'm trying to understand.
One of the things that I put, this is a matter of interpretation. And so one of the things I considered when I was doing this is that the greenway runs directly in front of this property. And the intention with the clear zone is to provide street level activation for pedestrians and bicycles. And so that was one of the reasons I said in the landscaping section that there may be opportunities to collaborate with the applicant once the site is built. Just to, maybe like the city has a mini grant again, where we're putting in bike racks, maybe they want to take advantage of that or something to that effect. But I think that the streetscape as it is designed meets the intention of that's the wrong way. I think that the landscape of Colorado Boulevard as it is designed meets the intention of what the clear zone is supposed to be, and that the way the building is situated on the lot meets the intention of addressing Colorado Boulevard in a way that is practicable. And then, you throw in the marijuana cultivation needs to be directly attached to the retail operation. It's just kind of it's a complex situation right there. So we have that clear zone in place, but the applicant, to be fair, that's not all provided on where you would imagine the boundary of this property is. And that's kind of the analysis I went through when I looked at this, but that's certainly open to interpretation.
Okay, is that something that we could ourselves in a work session or whatever, like kind of look in more detail? And because, like interpretation, someone else could be next and maybe see that differently. Because I don't know, I imagine that maybe it's not the case with them, but maybe they do want to have benches and stuff like that. But I imagine it because it's permeable area. I imagine that will be more on their setback space or, in front of the actual building. And will that be considered clear zone? And so that's a part that I want to, and it's not necessarily specific to you guys' property, but I think something maybe we want to look into, ourselves later on.
I believe you guys are talking to Jared about comprehensive plan and things like that. And the East End overlay district could certainly be looked at on some of these design standards during that time. And I think there's other properties where it may become more of a consideration when the right of way looks a little bit different than it does in front of this property.
Look, when we designed this, we really tried to look at that section of the code. And what I saw as the predominantly critical point was that we don't want buildings along Colorado Boulevard to have a huge setback, right? They're really not integrated with the sidewalk and the streetscape. So you really want coming right up to it. And that's inviting. And it's very different than what planning used to be, where you wanted these huge setbacks off everything and all this space. And now we're realizing is that, Idaho Springs has a semi-urban environment, right? Especially not the downtown, definitely. But this area, when you bring things closer, they're more inviting, they become more part of the place and setting. And you don't need a big gap between the street. And so that was kind of our goal in our interpretation in trying to comply with what schools.
one more final point I just want to mention. The school bus stop is right there on the corner. And we haven't talked to the applicant about that, but we would love to have infrastructure for the students there at some point, and there may or may not be space for that, but I'm sure that we can talk about that in the future and how that would work and make sure it fits within that clear zone. But in the code, it does say, just so you are comfortable with what we did, the city administrator, their designee, can allow for a reduction in clear space on the property if it's determined that the additional street frontage is not necessary, the spirit of the build to zone is met, and the reduction would be compatible with adjacent properties. And I think when you consider all the different factors in play here with the marijuana regulations and the corner and the fact that they're allowing us to build that sidewalk along the east side of the property, I think that we have met the intention of providing that space around the property. So I think that's where we're kind of going with our analysis on that.
If that is a bus stop, I feel like maybe it would be important for us to, and I believe that, the people here with this project are open to that, but I think we might want to have it a little more on writing to be like, okay, maybe if there's a bus stop there, maybe we want to, I don't know if a condition, but maybe, that is a possibility that might happen.
I think the other.
Or to know that that's something they're like, that's not a thing because that's pretty much where the big trucks are usually will be coming, or maybe not big trucks.
And I think the other thing is the school district may not stay there as well. And so I think that the improvement of that sidewalk connection to the bridge on the Gilson Street, that, because if you think about both frontages there, there's going to be a significant amount of clear space there. So,
So that driveway is an existing 16-foot concrete access to the main, which is right there. The space that's over to the right has no lamppost there, and frankly, that's really the city's right now. After the Colorado Boulevard project came in and did everything. And that's not, as far as I'm concerned, I don't think we as, Scott as the property owner or us as the tenant, really have a say in what happens on that corner.
Yeah.
I think it's
It's not
really
part
already
of the-
up to the discretion of the city, what they want to do there. And I can't think of why we would object to anything that the city wanted to do to make it what's best for the public.
Within their rights to do.
Yeah, there's no interference on our part. And I don't think we have the right by the way.
Okay, do we have any other questions from the commissioners? Lisa, you're just jumping.
No, actually, I'm okay.
Okay. No other questions? Okay, we'll close
Wait
the
a
public.
second, where is it? A couple more things. Another note that I would just like to make with you, John, is this doesn't influence at all my decision about this, but the fact that there was a community meeting and there was actually no community show up just kind of, raises my eyebrow. One of them, like, was it actually a community meeting? Yes, of course, you guys did what it was necessary to do, but I feel like we have the means, these days to maybe be able to spread it in more ways than just the one that is absolutely minimal necessary. So maybe we should look into that as well. And that's something we
Yeah, I
can
think
talk later.
notification processes, there's the sections of chapter 21 that talk about notification processes, submittal requirements, and public approval processes are all things that could be considered at later date by planning commission. And I did note too, the one question I had about mailing kind of along the same lines before.
Yes.
And we do have new tools at the city that could be utilized for different purposes. So I think if you guys wanted to talk about that at a future time, that would be possible.
And I will note, I did receive one phone call. My
Okay.
number was on there from somebody who lives in the neighborhood behind. Just asking about what's going on there. We talked, she was a customer. She said, great. But I definitely know that there was, it went out. I just think that really what people looked at this and said, sure.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And the other thing, I don't know exactly, well, here, I'm just gonna share it. When Riverbend was being built, a couple times they were getting material delivered or, equipment delivered. And we were, traffic was stopped and because there was this big trucks just blocking the road and there was no flaggers. I don't know if that's something from the city side or something we even request, but I assume that you guys are gonna be getting some materials delivered and all that. And so how can we make sure that when that happens, there's either good communication with the city so the city can do whatever they could do and need to do, or if you guys can make sure that you have the right
Sure.
people, personnel, employees to do.
We do have parking and loading requirements in our code.
Uh-huh.
I think that might be the appropriate way to handle it, because I don't think there's a criteria you could use to put a condition here for specifically on that. But I am pretty sure after working with Michael for the last couple of months that we can communicate and probably find an agreeable way to handle it if it.
Yeah, I'll go further and
Yeah.
tell you that the person who will be most impacted by a big 18-wheeler sitting out there is gonna be my store. I used to drive down here, and every time I drive between Winter Park or Denver or wherever else I was going, I would drive in. And my sole purpose was during the Colorado Boulevard project to make sure that the cones were wide enough that somebody could make a left-hand turn into our parking lot. We lived through that. It was horrific. It was not good for business. And I can tell you right now that the person who will be the most upset, angry, and anal retentive about how that is, operated there is going to be the person whose retail space is blocked by it. So, look, I obviously you want to make sure that there are checks and balances on bad actors and on people taking advantage of the public right of ways in a way that is not harmonious with, people driving through there and with the neighbors. We are also the neighbors. Our whole goal here is when we're building this and we're redesigning our retail, I mean, if we're shut down for a day, we lose a lot of revenue. That revenue is not really replaced. It just adds to the cost of this project. So if we're doing this, the contractor we're working with, by the way, I have a 17-year relationship with him. I was his attorney before I started, growing and selling weed. And he built our Cabernet project. He's building our Golden model right now. And that guy is the person I would trust most to make sure that everything works the way it ought to work. Of anybody I know. That's why we only want to turn over this project to him. And we will be making sure that as we're going through the construction project, I mean, look, there's gonna be some problem, it's not gonna be perfect. It never is when you're trying to do this and with deliveries and that kind of stuff. But I'm gonna be making sure that when those deliveries come in, my business is impacted as minimally as possible, which is gonna be, meaning our interests are aligned with protecting the public right.
Yeah, definitely you guys having a store next door helps a lot with that.
Yeah, I got customers.
Yeah, one other question.
Yeah.
On the red part, the joints in between the panels, the lines, now will they be there with something in the middle, or they put up flush, or how does that work?
Are you referring to the awning that's right there?
No, just on the siding.
There's one of the images that you showed was the stucco finish on the church.
No,
side building.
just raise it up, try the side of the building.
I think the connection between panels, if it's gonna be a line or if it's gonna be like one full looking.
Yeah, I think that is
The siding.
is that the siding will look like that. And then it actually creates a little bit of, that's my understanding, talking to the architects, which I'm not an architect. But that is essentially the way that I believe it will look. But look, we'll be bringing these panels in. I don't think they're that quite as big as that, but we're kind of designing it in a way that, has that mining town look.
One of your images shows the stucco panel on the building that looks similar to, I don't know if it's a church or not, but it looks like a church.
We can go to that.
It's on the other screen.
Yes.
One of these ones?
Yeah, it's the white building. It
So
shows
it's
the
the
stucco finish.
other video and the second image, I believe.
Yeah. That's the same finish. It's just, this would be red. It would be brick color red. And so you can see in this one, it's a little difficult, but my understanding is they're interlocked panels, and so you're not going to see a huge seam is what, when I talked to the architect on the project, that's what he told. I think he's still here. We could ask him if he's here.
Is Nate on?
Oh, he left, actually, I'm sorry.
Okay.
But my understanding is they're an interlocking panel with no
Yeah.
seam in between.
Yeah, I think Jonathan's 100% correct on that. And that's
Is
what
it, is it possible to have, instead of just that kind of material, actually make it look like brick? Cause I kind of like how it looks in the 3D.
He told me there might be some other finishes, but the stucco one is because what they do is they spray it on like a wall finish, like on drywall. And stucco, I think the longevity is the reason that's the selection, because otherwise they don't want to put like a veneer on it and then it fall off.
And look, I mean, listen, we are growing marijuana, and when you're doing that, you are controlling humidity levels inside, which are not consistent with normal environments. And so having this, having that as paneling on, we think is going to be the best for longevity. And I don't know how to adhere a brick to it.
I was thinking maybe there's some technology has evolved as well that makes it look like brick.
Right, you can do anything with money,
It
right?
just looks like the little firehouses that we have around town, you know?
The architect did tell me he was gonna look into that and see if it was a feasible option. So
I like
I don't know if he's
myself.
completed it.
Yeah, and look, I mean, if I can get something that looks like a faux brick on there and has that rustic look, I mean, you could buy wallpaper that's like 3D that has that brick look on it. I love it. As long as it's gonna look good. I mean, this is something that we're pulling people in, you know? We're getting them when they stop for gas or they go to Carl's Jr. or Starbucks, they look over and they say, wow, what's that? And that we're pulling people in. So, you know, anything we can do to make it look good, we're gonna do, 100%. And I like that idea. I think it would be attractive. I just don't know the feasibility versus cost component of doing it. But if I can do it at relatively same cost, I think we'd be thrilled to have something that has that more rustic brick look.
Okay, any other questions from the commissioners? Okay, with that, we'll close the public hearing at 7:36
Thank you.
p.m. And then do we have a motion? I think one of the things from the discussion, if you look on page 11, there's the suggested motion with some of the conditions. From what it sounds like we've talked about is maybe the added condition of the prohibited materials, that they will come up with something that can be approved then through the city administrator. And if you look, that's not one of the conditions on the page, but if that is something that we've discussed and is wanted as a condition. So with that, do we have a motion?
I'll motion to, oh, sorry, go ahead. You got it, James?
You're there, go ahead. You can say.
I'll move to approve with the conditions as described in the suggestion motion, with the addition that the applicant works with the city staff on the exact material.
Actually,
Can I?
can you read the whole thing?
Happy to. Move to approve the final development plan for the Gotti Limited Marijuana Cultivation Facility at 2820 Colorado Boulevard. The conditions being as follows. Prior to issuance of any permit related to the plan, the following will occur. An amended site plan must be filed with the approved, filed with and approved by the city administrator. That includes the sidewalk and grading details along the east side of Gilson Street from Colorado Boulevard to the Gilson Street Bridge that conform to the design specifications of the city of Idaho Springs. The property owner shall provide approximately 10 feet of width of the right-of-way dedication approved by the city, either by easement or a subsequent plat amendment on the east side of the property between the Gilson Street Bridge and Colorado Boulevard deemed adequate for the maintenance and upkeep of Gilson Street and the installation of a new sidewalk. The proposed pole sign shall be relocated to meet the 10-foot setback requirement. And the applicant will work with city staff or the city administrator that the non-standard materials will be approved by the city. We good?
Is that good?
Can we
Do we have a second?
make
First.
oh, yes,
I'll second it, yeah.
Okay, now discussion.
thank you. Can we make like a request that we try to look into having it brick ideally as the first option, and if not, you guys can choose whatever is best. Besides that,
That would have to be something that was put in the motion.
yeah, on the last one that he just read.
You want to, I can motion it again.
No, we-
I don't think so. We can just, do we have to reread it? Is that, I mean, are you guys okay with that?
I
As the
don't,
applicant,
I don't mind.
I'm uncomfortable with putting the exact word brick in there
I agree.
because I think it's too complicated for us to be able to do that. in a
Yeah, no,
consistent-
sorry, my intention is to be like brick look like, doesn't, not like brick
What
is
I-
a thing. But also, what I'm saying is, as a first option, that if that is not feasible, that they have the option to choose what is best besides that.
If I might, I understand what you're saying. I can assure you, I think it would be very attractive. And I like it. I'd like to do it. What I don't want is a condition that becomes too subjective and interpretive that we could run into some problems with the interpretation of it subsequently. And I promise you that we will try and look into that option. And if it is economically feasible, I agree with you that it will be attractive. I have to look at the cost though of doing it and the feasibility of doing it. And we will present some options to the city. And if we can't do it, we're not going to present that option. If we can do it, but sitting right here, I just would prefer it not be quite so specific, but rather, I think staff has heard you. They've all heard me promise this. And so I will certainly report back to city staff about the viability of this and then present options that we think is appropriate.
Okay, you guys, I think we've got a motion on the floor, so the discussion is supposed to be
Yeah,
between
and
us here.
exactly. I was just gonna tell you, like, whatever you say, cool, but this has to be decided between us.
Of course,
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Let's do roll call.
sorry,
I'm
who was the
requesting that we modify, though, I would like to hear discussion between you guys, more than just one.
Okay,
Like, because I think it will look better if they're able to figure out, like, Jonathan said that he talked to the architect and the architect said that might be a possibility. And I'm not requesting that it's brick instead. I'm just saying if there's some kind of a stucco that makes it look more than just the color of brick.
yeah, I guess I'm not comfortable with proving that because I think big brick would look horrible, but that's my opinion. So I guess I look at it as they come with what is in that list, not the parts that they have in there that aren't part of that, and then we leave it to the city. Or they have to come back and we have to
And that's
approve the
still my
materials.
the intention of my slight modification or addition, I guess, is just that the city still has a decision. I'm not trying to say that that's not the case. But I mean, again, I'm not trying to push it down their throats. I'm just like trying to hear what you guys think about it.
Yeah,
Well,
no,
I
I
think
mean,
I
that's
added
my
in-
thought on it.
I think I added in the part and that this applicant would work with the city to find an exterior material that it fits in and meets the design standards. The city will do that. If it's possible to do brick or something else, we'll do that. I think as motioned, the the city has the ability to say, no, that exterior doesn't look good. You should try one of these.
Yes. Especially if they're like talking about bringing a panel, they
Right,
can look at
exactly.
and be like, no, actually, that's, yeah, I'm agree with that. Anybody else?
I'm good with the way it is.
Oh, okay, so
Roll call,
we're just going with
Actually,
it.
who was the second?
done. Okay, roll call,
Jefferson Nielsen,
yes.
Chuck Howard,
Yes.
Tom Remmer,
Yes.
Ken Staymaker,
Yes.
Ursula.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, the motion carries. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
So when do you start construction?
As soon as we get our building permit approved.
It's a long ways till winter right now, so.
Our final city council hearing will be on April.
Alan was here, people making them build it.
Okay,
Rock
so with that, you don't have any other business? You did your staff report?